We're going to try to figure out if we can finish up these 2 PRs. I think we'll definitely be able to get the Google one done. But we're going to try to get both the Google provider PR over the finish line, at least so that it can be used. And then also try to finish up the Bedrock provider PR. So we'll start with the Google one. And I got some feedback from Tim. You all probably agree with this, that Google Generative AI Client is just too long a name. So we're just going to remove the generative part. And then if we add a Vertex, if we add a Google Vertex provider, it'll be Google Vertex AI, blah, blah, blah. Do we want to update imports? Sure. And then let's do a PNPN code gen. This should fix the index file. Nice. Make sure all of these get saved. And then we can go in here and do a Google Generative AI. And replace it with Google AI. We'll do it globally. Okay, that probably will break a few things. Do the same thing here. That should at least fix a lot of the errors in here. And then let's do the final. Same thing in here. Okay. I think that's good. So, off stream, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but whatever. I just cleaned up this stream request method the last time that I streamed to avoid double unwrapping a stream. What else? Generative AI doesn't support image content, I don't think. Let's see. Looks good. This looks good. Cool. So I think we can work on the AI language model now. And maybe for inspiration, again, let's look at the open AI language model. So just like the global provider gets a config object, the individual services get configuration as well. And so we're going to do the Google AI provider language model. Now export class config. Once we have more providers implemented, I think it would be good. And I actually was talking to Tim about this. It would probably be good to abstract a lot of this like repetitive work, or like try to abstract as much as we can into the base AI package to make it easier for folks to write their own providers. Like maybe abstract some of these like common patterns or whatever. Actually, let me open up my stream to make sure I'm not missing any chats. Cool. Right. We're literally just following the same structure as the OpenAI thingy. So right now, this is all just kind of boilerplate. Hey, you got service. And this will be at reflect AI Google. Or Google AI language with model big. And looks good. We'll import this type. And the type of request that we need to submit is a just double check. Generate content request. So our config object is going to be this. Let's just open this up as well. Go here. Oops. Go here. And take a look at this. So basically, like what we're trying to do here is anything that the language model service is not going to handle, anything that we want to be like configurable, we're just going to drop into this config object. So things like, for example, contents, this is going to come from the language model. So we can omit that from the service shape. Same thing with tools. Same thing with system instruction. Same thing with actually model. We do allow to be overridden by the config. What is tool config? Mode in which the function calling should execute. Interesting. So mode is going to be handled by us via the on the AI language model. We have like a tool call. You can say whether or not the tool call is required or not, but this allowed function names thing could be something that somebody wants to set. So maybe we'll do something like and this is really what I want to do, but so we'll omit it here. We'll do tool config, and then we'll join this with a Create only tool. Great. Partial. Omit. All those generated dot tool config dot encoded, and we want to omit the mode. So now, let's just test this. Const stat equals data service. If we want to specify the tool config, I think we also have to allow this to be. Getting here. Tool config. You should only get, yeah. Oops. I guess what we actually want here is, so the partial should make tool config optional. You want, we can handle the rest later. Let's do this. Let's go in here. Function calling config, function calling config. This is going to be a partial. Type of generated dot machine type generated dot function calling config uncoded. So this should be still like a partial. Perfect. And now we just want to omit mode from there. So omit. There is probably a better way to do this, but can't be bothered right now. Great. So now a user can specify the allowed function names, but we still control the mode because the mode is going to come from a separate config in the AI language model. So a lot of this provider creation and whatever is really just massaging the information between like the API that we are providing and the API that the provider expects. So a lot of this is just that. Okay. Type create or generate content request. Interesting that model is just a string here. Do they list their models out anywhere? Yeah. Like MNI. Oh man, that's gonna suck. So information about, so this is probably like when you list models, we might just have to make an API request to get this information. Some of the other providers like don't generate this information either in their open API spec. All right. Well, we'll figure that out. But we want the model to be kind of like we want the model to be something you can get autocomplete for if you're using a well-known model. Otherwise, like you should be able to pass a string. And so we use the TypeScript trick that looks like this, unioning the model with a string and an empty object, so that you can either pass a string or you can get autocomplete for the model still in your IDE. All right, so this is the provider metadata. Let's create the actual AI model now. Google AI language model. Split counts model. So this AI model interface is basically a way for us to allow you to treat models like layers. Model thing and empty object for model. We will figure this out in a minute. Config. Omit. Get the imports. Import. Model. Well, it's their model. You also need your language model. Model. Cool. And you want this. And this is going to look very similar as well. We're going to need, well, we're going to not import either of those as types. This is going to be Google AI clients, and we're going to have a make constructor at some point that takes in these things and it's going to give us back and this will actually like construct the model itself, the AI model rather. It will yield AI clients, and then we'll have to fix this. Import. Okay, so now we just need to figure out curl request we can make. Google generative developer documentation. And we just want to list the models. API reference, models. Programmatically list the available models. That's what we want. Get information about a specific model. No, we want list. Yeah. So we're going to source our .env. And then we should be able to do this. Shoot. Hang on 1 second. Let me just avoid leaking my API key again. Hmm. Um, well, let's go grab an API key. How about that? API key. Let's get a Gemini API key. Create an API key. Or, oh, this is the wrong browser. All right, let's delete this key and get a new one. Create API key. Create API key. Copy. Here, I'll even show you all what I'm seeing. Um, can I curl without the API key? Please use API key or other form of API consumer identity to call this API. Permission to that. Cool. Cool. Um, do I need to create like a different one? API key. Maybe it was a restricted API key before. Let's see. Uh, one set. This is literally an unrestricted API key that I just generated, and I'm getting this, still getting this message. This is like ridiculous. Thank you, Google, for having such horrendous documentation. I don't understand why this doesn't work. I need to roll. I don't know. All right. Well, I'm not going to waste too much more time on this. Not going to waste too much more time on it. Let's let's do this. Export type model equals for now. Language model. Okay. All right. Let's see what we can do here. So what we need to do now is we need to create an interface between what we get back from the client. We need to create an interface that submits requests to the client properly and also receives responses and transforms them into like AI responses. So, first thing we probably want to do is let's create a make request method in here. Traced. And this is the thing that's actually going to create the request shape that we'll pass on to the client. So we'll grab the current context. We're going to return some object that satisfies the shape of type of generated dot generate content request. So we have to satisfy this type basically. First thing is the model, and that comes in as an option, but we can also pass the option through the config. So we're going to basically do this. So what this does is we'll set the model with whatever we get at first when we create the AI language model. But then on a per request basis, the user can actually override the model that's in use, like the actual, like Gemini 2.5 or Gemini 2.5 Pro, whatever they're called. You can override that per request. So and it's done through the config object. So what we do here is we spread in the config that we get through the constructor here, which is not going to have a model in it. And then we also check the config in the environment. So we try to grab the config out of this context, which is per request, and we override anything that we get from this config, grabbing it out of the context. We override like anything with that config. So per request config always wins. And then we have some other things we need to put in here. So these things are all going to be handled by the config object, except for tool config, where we know we're going to have options.config.toolconfig or context.unsafemap.get. Actually, let's just do this. Const per request config equals context.unsafemap.get leave that key. This is just like a lower level way of doing like a service option in effect, like optionally grabbing a service. And we're going to do per request config dot. We're going to spread that in, and we're also going to do. Oh, this is fine. We spread in this, then we also spread in per request config. Cool config. And then we also want to set the mode. Oh, God. So much nesting. So the mode here can be a couple of different things, I think. Let's actually copy these out. Put them here. And see what we need to do. So over here, I've got like the same kind of situation. So I do const mode type of generated dot mode. I forgot what option. Function calling config mode dot encoded or undefined equals undefined. And one of the options we get in here, whoa, what's up, Dylan? I guess you finished up your stream. TypeScript sucks. TypeScript does suck, but we love it, right? TypeScript sucks, but we love it. Okay, so for all the folks that just joined, we are working on finishing up 2 PRs that I have in progress. One of which is adding a Google generative AI provider to the Effect AI packages, and one of which is adding a Bedrock provider to the AI packages. So we're going to see what we can get done in like the next hour or so. We'll probably go for like an hour and a half, see if we can get at least the Google generative AI provider over the finish line. But I know there's interest in the Amazon Bedrock provider as well, so we'll try to get that done. Change your last name to Powers. Yeah, Dylan actually had, or Sebastian had a great idea for my username across all platforms. Just inverting every like part of my name, like Minbad Blue instead of Maxwell Brown. Hey, Ichiru, how's it going? Thank you, Ichiru, for the follow, and thank you, Federico, for the follow. Appreciate it. Okay, so what we're currently working on, like I said, is trying to finish up this, at least an initial version of this Google generative AI provider. Normal Wrexham. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So what we're trying to do right now is all of our providers have a client that interfaces with the AI provider directly. So we already, on a few other streams, we finished up the client that's going to talk to the Google generative AI provider. But the client expects to speak to the provider in the language that the provider understands. So that's kind of like whatever API the provider exposes to us. But our AI packages, we have like a base API that we provide. This way, like you can code against these providers, similar to like the Vercel AI SDK, where you have like kind of a unified interface to all providers. We do the same thing, but we think we do it a little better, of course. Just kidding. Like we just do it differently and in an effect way. But what we're working on right now is the part of the like building a provider where you actually interface between the language the provider understands and the language our AI SDK understands. So right now, this make request function is the thing that's going to receive a request in like the format that we understand. So the stuff coming from like the protocol that our AI SDK expects, and it's going to translate it into the protocol that the client needs. So like an actual request that can go to the client. Neovim with Capuchin, sharper guy. Yes. I stole most of the visual config here from Dylan. I liked his setup, but Dylan sets up his Neovim config in Lua, and I set up mine with Nix. If you folks are curious, actually, I open source it. I use this great library called NixVim. NixVim implementation. Yeah, NixVim is a great library. I really like what these folks do. Plus, the authors are super responsive. Like they're really cool. And I just really like what they do. There's actually other like Nix libraries for building like your Neovim config. So NixVim is very heavy on the like Nix patterns. You like write Nix config to like configure Neovim. But there's other ones. I forget the name. Neovim config for Nix. There's one that lets you write like much more Lua. And then it's like you still get the benefits of Nix, but you can write your config in Lua. I forget the name of that library. But I prefer NixVim. I think it's really nice. And for anybody who wants to check out my config. I thought you were going to say Fennel. No, I don't remember the name of Nix library, right? Neovim config in Lua. I want to give this library credit, so I wish I could find it. Nix Cats. Yes, this is it. Nix Cats Neovim GitHub. So similar thing, right? It allows you to get the benefits of Nix, but instead of being like very heavy on the Nix end, it's very heavy on like letting you write your config in Lua, but still benefit from like Nix stuff. I think this library is like a little less popular, but I'm not giving it like a fair shot. But it looks cool. If you're like Dylan and you prefer writing your config in Lua, this might be and you want to use Nix, this could be a good option. Fennel is a Lisp which translated to Lua. Got it. You use NixVim and you really like it, Sharper Guy. I really like I like NixVim a lot. All right, so getting back to this, so this is going to receive. So these AI language model options come from our protocol. And so this is like the stuff that we get that we then need to translate into what Google expects. So right now we're working on the tool call mode. And this is just ugly as sin, but this is what we have. How does one get used to NeoVim? Yeah, that's actually, Erlich, that's actually how I got used to NeoVim. I started using it in VS Code. I started using just Vim bindings in VS Code and got used to like movements and things like that. And I have like this unhealthy obsession with configuration management. I don't know why. I just really like managing configuration. So I decided I wanted to try like NeoVim, the editor itself. And yeah, I have hundreds of themes. I switched so much. It's bad. Yeah, I mean, that's okay. That's okay. I think that's fine. I like Cappuccino because it's easy on my eyes. I don't have the best eyes, so it's easy for me to use this theme. Okay, so if we have a predicate that is not undefined, so tool choice is the thing that we get from our SDK. So if we look at it, basically, we have Jimmy Babs. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it very much. If we get a tool choice, this is what it looks like in our language. So we can either set it to auto, which means the model gets to decide whether or not it's going to call tools. We can set it to required, meaning the model has to call some tool, but we don't specify which. We could set it to none, meaning the model can't call a tool, or we can set it to a specific tool. So right now we're massaging that format into the format Google expects here. Not many of the editors have good Emacs emulation, so I just had to bite the bullet. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with the sentiment of like, if you're interested in NeoVim and you want to like start the easy way, do it the way I did it. Like just install Vim bindings in like your editor and just use it. It does take a while to get used to the movements and stuff. And like, I'm not even like the best. I still do like really inefficient movements all the time, but, I do feel like after about a day or two, you start to get used to certain things. I think like when you're if you want to get into like Vim, I think just getting used to movements is like a really good way to start. There was a game, Vim game. Yeah, this one. I tried this out for a while, which helped me to like at least to get used to some of the basic movements. And then you start like going from there. You start learning, okay, well, I really wish I could do X. You're like, oh yeah, you can do that, but you have to learn how to do like use the command window down here, or then you start installing plugins. Like Dylan and I really like Oil for navigating the file system, because if you're familiar with NetRC, Oil should feel like really familiar. Anyway, Erlich, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Okay, so if we have a tool choice, we also need to respect whether or not we're using structured. This request thingy can also receive requests for structured outputs. I haven't looked into the structured outputs with Google yet. That's something we're gonna have to look at. But let's, for the moment, just use the same logic we're using in the OpenAI side of things. So if we have a tool choice and we're not doing a structured tool call, and we have more than one tool, then we can try to set this up. So if we have a tool choice equal to auto, the mode becomes auto. Else if tool choice equals, actually do it in order, none, auto, mode equals auto, else if tool choice equals required, mode equals required. Can't imagine switching from VS Code to NeoVim. I used Vim without any plugins, highlighting LSP and so on for years, and never bothered with IDs until I switched from NeoVim and started comparing it like mad. Yeah, I don't know. It worked for me for the switch from VS Code to NeoVim. I think getting started with Vim bindings somewhere before you get into like NeoVim is the right way to go. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about setting up an LSP yourself and like highlighting and tree sitter and blah 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 when you just want to learn Vim bindings. Like, you should focus on learning Vim bindings first. Basic ones like movements, etc. Mode equals any. And then the last thing is else if tool. Actually, we know that it's an object at this point. So does how do we force a tool call? Oil is great. I can also recommend mini.file. Yeah, I looked at mini.files when I was evaluating file system like navigation with Vim, but ultimately, I don't know. I was familiar with NetRC from the future. I mean, from the past. So it just made sense to use oil. What am I doing? I want to know how to force a tool call with Google Gemini API. All right, function calling. Parallel function calling, composition, function calling modes. Okay. Auto is the default. The model is constrained to always predict a function call and guarantees function schema enhance. If allowed function names is not specified, the model can choose from any of the provided function declarations. If allowed function names is provided as a list, the model can only choose from the functions in that list. Use this mode when you require a function call response to every prompt. So it sounds like when we need to force a function call, you need to like set the function calling config thing. All context protocols and best practices. So then what we probably actually want here I think, is for const function calling config type of generated dot function calling config dot encoded or undefined equals undefined. Actually, hang on. In the air, we have mode and allowed function names. We should probably detect if the user's requiring so like I think the way that you do required tools with Google or like a specific tool call, like to force a specific tool call, I think you would do mode equals any, and then you would do, what's the name of this field? Allowed function names equals tool choice dot tool. Because in this case, tool is going to be set to the name of the tool to call. Why is it not tool choice dot? Why is it any? Oh, right. So I think in like this case, I'm not sure if the best idea here is to like override anything that the user provided or not, or to return an error. So like imagine the user has in their function calling config, if they have allowed function names already specified, but then they submit a request to the LLM to force a particular tool call. I think I'm just going to override it for now. Yeah, I think I'm just going to override it for now. So this will be options dot config dot tool config dot function calling config. This is so ugly. And we're going to make this mutable. Mutable. And then I think what we're going to do is just do a function calling config equals wrong there. Signed the value but never used. I think this is better. I think. And instead of setting the mode here, man, this is just awful. You know what? We're just going to do the whole thing. And this is going to be options dot config tool config. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say tool config equals function calling config. And this is where we'll do Habam Gamer. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate that very much. And we'll set the mode to none. Whoops. Why is this not happy? This seems like the least bad thing. It's still bad, but yeah. I think this is the least bad. I don't know. We're not gonna bike shed this too much. All right, so that takes care of the tool calls piece. We still have to deal with, if we're getting a structured tool call, I need to look at how the Google API does that. We need to create the actual messages, because the prompt that comes in is just AI input, which is a structure that if we look at the actual data type here, AI input is a structure that we expose, and it's basically just a container for an array of messages. And these messages are a union of different things. We can either have a user message and a system message or a tool message. And then each one of these things has specific parts. So if it's a tool message, it can have tool message parts. If it's a system message, you can have a system message parts and user message, as you would expect. And then the actual parts themselves are a union of different things. So like, kind of like our own API over the top of a lot of the APIs that these providers expose. So we'll need to make content, and this will probably take in the current method we're calling for tracing purposes, the system, and the prompt. And then we'll return the content here. And if we look at the implementation here, const make content equals ooh, that's interesting. Yeah. Table and trace. So we're gonna have a method. This is for error purposes, so we can propagate the name of the method to calling. The system prompt, if there is one, and then the actual prompt is AI input. Let's get those imports. Option, and we need AI opaque. So, Thiago, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. All right. So we're probably going to want to Who can solve the docs at this point? So we can look together. I'll pull this over. So the first thing I actually want to look up is structured outputs. Structured outputs. So you can configure Gemini for structured output instead of unstructured text, blah, 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 blah. So config, response schema, response MIME type. So it looks like in some respects, it's similar to OpenAI, which has a specific way of generating structured output. Let's take a look at this. So this is a field under config in generate content, right? So in the OpenAI API, you have to like specify response format and whatever. And because our base provider needs to accommodate providers that don't have a direct API for structured content, we model it as a tool call. But that doesn't always mean that like the underlying provider is going to call a tool. We model it that way, but it's not necessarily the thing that's going to happen. So let's see. Let's see what we can do here. So this config thing, generation config, that's what we want. Generation config. What does this type look like? Generation config, response MIME type, response schema, presence penalty. Okay. So we probably want to omit these two things from the base options as well. Default as text output. Actually, maybe we don't want to overwrite this. Okay. What we probably want to do something like this. So but let's start with this. And here we'll do the response schema. And how we call it? It's literally just the JSON schema. Yeah. And the response MIME type has to be set to this. So here we'll do use structured question mark. Then we just set it to oops. Why can't that type? Let's do the response MIME type is either going to be if it's a structured tool, use structured question mark is going to be application JSON. If it's not a structured tool, then we either need to set it to options.config dot generation config that's response MIME type. Or not the prettiest. I mean, we could simplify this a bit, but so this will extract the correct MIME type. And then we need the response schema as well. This is so bad. And actually, what I think we're going to do. Hello, no name. You've got a question. Go for it. I'm not sure how I want to do this yet. I know, so the JSON schema that we need is going to be in tools 0.parameters. So we can do this const response schema equals use structured tools 0.parameters any. Wait, what is this title? This JSON schema, okay, or undefined, right? Because this thing. What are our options here? Okay. If JSON schema undefined is not assignable to. Oh man. JSON formatted output. JSON schema is a more recent specification than OpenAPI. Schema object is based on. Support for JSON schema is available as a preview using the field response JSON schema, which accepts any JSON schema with the following limitations. Yeah. Response. Generation config. Whatever JSON schema is available as a preview. Response JSON schema. Open link. Okay. It is not here. I don't know if you know it, but I bought a new PC. I have no idea, no name. So there is no documentation for this that I can see. Like Google Gemini response JSON scale. No worries. I just have no idea. Man. I wonder if the Vercel AI APK has anything about this. Let's see. Google Gen AI does not support all OpenAI API schema features. Convert JSON schema to OpenAPI schema. Okay. Hmm. I wonder if this will work. We could cargo cult this and just use it. We'll see if it works when we test it out. And we use JSON schema 7. Hmm. All right, we're going to have to revisit this. It's kind of annoying. It doesn't support. I don't know how to pronounce this properly, but Joao Pedro, thank you very much for your follow. Appreciate that very much. So, what we do know is that the PubScub, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate that. What we do know is that um, our tools, well, so tools is probably the last thing we need to configure here besides the content that we're sending, at least for our basic implementation right now. And we need to look at the docs for tool calls. Let's take a look at tools. Thank you very much, PubScub. I hope you have a productive day as well. Unless your day is over, in which case I hope you have a good evening. Do they have their own do they have their own SDK for tool calls as well? How do you folks handle it? Tools. Prepare tools. Oh my goodness. No. We have to convert everything to Open API schema. That's really annoying. For new. Basically, the function declaration is the tool name, the description, and then the parameters, but as an Open API schema. So we need to do like we're going to need to do a conversion. For now, this can be a regular function. And this is just an array. Yeah, language model, options, tools. What is the schema for tools? An array of tool. Type of generated tool dot encoded element array. Not actually that we want. We want this. So the name is just going to be the tool. The name, description, tool.description, and then the parameters. Convert JSON schema to Open API schema. Cool. But man, that really sucks. We're going to need the same thing here for response schema. Convert. And this thing, well, we probably want to remove. If you're calling a structured tool, you're never going to have any other tools, at least if the API designed the way it is currently. And I'm evaluating like changing that, but for now, this is the way it is. So if you don't have a structured tool and you have tools, then we convert the tools. Otherwise, we don't do anything with them. You just do this inline. And this has to be function affiliations, I guess. Function declarations does not exist in. Maxo Dev, thank you very much for your raid. Appreciate that. Welcome. For the folks that joined, we are working on adding, leaving my crowd of volunteers. No worries. Everything is appreciated. For the folks that joined, we're working on developing some additional providers. So we're working on a TypeScript library called Effect, and Effect has an AI SDK, and we basically allow you to program against a generic like common interface, and then we have providers that you can plug in. So we're working on a Google provider integration right now. We have integrations right now with Anthropic and OpenAI, and we have in progress PRs open for Google as well as Amazon Bedrock. Yeah. So right now we're just working on this. So why is this not happy? Function declarations. Function declarations. Am I spelling it wrong? Thank you, Naxado. Appreciate that. Does not exist. Naxado, thank you for the follow. All right, let's investigate what's going on here. So tools, we've got an array of tool. Okay. Now it's happy. Okay, now I'll do this. So just to make things look nicer. Yeah, so we're gonna have to figure out a way to make this work. I'm pretty sure if we look at the convert tool method here, this make JSON schema thing. So I think that we always get definitions. Yeah, AST that get property signatures will only return property signatures for your property key. So they'll return the property signatures for a type literal and then your property key, type literal. So I think we're only going to get object types out. And if we look here, we only get object types out of our converter at the moment. Let's take a look at their implementation again. So, and their definition looks like what? Openly. Let's go to JSON schema 7 definition. From the JSON schema package. JSON schema. Okay. I don't think I care that much to look at that, but let's take a look at Vercel's implementation here and see what we can do to adapt it to our use case. So you're going to do this. Known. And yeah. So the JSON schema that we send along looks a tiny bit different than what they have here. Parameters need to be defined. All right, then let's take another look at this. So I guess with our implementation, if there is a JSON schema dot description, then result dot description equals description. If JSON schema dot So if we look at maybe TypeScript line, we go to playground, we go to import well, give the definition that they do, right? JSON schema seven definition. Can be a Boolean or JSON schema 7. And what is a JSON schema 7? Like, I see. They just have everything on here. That's annoying. Well, do we have anything that does this conversion? Open API. API. No. Open API. Oh, I think we might. From AST. What does this do? You know, that's not what I want then. Mm-hmm. All right, folks, I'm just trying to see if we have anything that already does this conversion, because I really don't want to have to think through doing it myself, but I think I might have to. I guess. All right. Well, hmm. Okay. Oh, okay. I think we're going to need a lot of these. Oh, oh, you're kidding me. None of these are exported? Oh, that's rough. Oh, man. All right. Well, we're almost out of time, but I think that what's essentially going to have to happen is I'm going to have to go through all of the JSON schema types that we expose and convert them individually. Which is fine. Can I do that easily? Swit. And do these all have? No. Mm, yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a annoying thing. But that's okay. We'll figure it out. I think for now, I'm going to probably get started on some other work that is closed source. So I think you can go ahead and read somebody else. See you guys next time. Cheers, everyone.